very happy to be joined here by Rylan Parrot. Met him for the first time out on the ice here this March Madness, out doing some pike fishing. Just happened to run into him out there, but we've been talking a lot since then, and we thought with having Shayna on here as our first podcast guest, and then her hosting this multi-species madness tournament, it's kind of fitting to get you on here since you and Zach kind of grinded out that whole thing. But I guess before we get too far ahead of ourselves, maybe just introduce yourself and let the listeners know kind of who you are and what you do.
Well, my name is Rylan. Obviously, I'm 18. I'm just south or close to Regina there, and yeah, a lot of our fishing, even in the multi-species tournament, a lot of our fishing is kind of based around multi-species. Zach and I were lucky enough to compete actually in Shayna's tournament at the end of June there, where we literally put on 4,000 kilometers chasing every species imaginable.
That's crazy.
Like the grayling were crazy. That's obviously something totally new, and chasing, some long-nosed sucker and all sorts of cool stuff. So it was a lot of fun, and obviously it kind of showcased how many species can actually be caught in a couple-day window. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I guess one thing we should mention too, you and Zach would be a lot different than lots of the other guys that would be in this tournament, and most of your regular fishing as well, as you guys are usually from shore, correct?
Yeah, we did that tournament like absolutely completely from shore, no kayak, no canoe. Yeah, it was challenging, but we had some good weather, 20 degree, 25 degrees, so it wasn't like we were, scorching in the heat, but it was definitely a bit of a challenge, but it made for some exciting fishing.
Yeah, for sure. And we're going to get into some of the shore fishing stuff later, because I think that's one of the huge parts that me and Brandon kind of gets pushed to the wayside, is the shore fishing stuff, because we don't do that as much, right? So I think for a lot of the people that are listening on here, there probably is quite a few people who are fishing from shore mostly. So I think lots of the information and whatnot that you'll have will be quite useful for them. But I guess we should start off, like I said, with the whole multi-species madness part. I guess maybe want to explain like how you came across it, and I guess what you thought of the tournament and kind of the format that you were looking at for that tournament.
Yeah, we kind of just saw it through like the social media stuff. Came across it on Facebook, and as us, loving our multi-species, we thought it would just be an awesome event to take part in. It challenged us, obviously, really challenged us. There was I believe 25 eligible species, so there was more than enough going on there, and when we came across it, we just kind of went for it, and it turned out to be honestly a really good event. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. And how many did you guys? I guess when we're saying you guys, talking about your buddy Zach as well, who you were doing pretty well the whole thing with, correct?
Yeah, basically, the night before the tournament, I completely blew my tire, like brutally on the way home. So I was at home for the first couple days, or the first day I did fish with Zach, but then he kind of went out and caught a 3-inch brook trout, which was a pretty clutch point.
Yeah.
And but a lot of it, we fished basically the whole thing together, and he caught 19 species in like 4 days or something, which was like pretty crazy. Unfortunately, the day after the event, we went out to a spot we were going to try, but backed out, and I caught a couple quillback and some moon eye that would have probably won us the tournament. But he did a great job, like 19 species, and that did come from all the way from Estevan to like L'Orange, right? So we had a big amount of ground to cover, but like in a couple days to put that many species on the board definitely shows that it's like doable. And at the end of June too, right? Like that's not an easy time to be catching a lot of fish from shore, but it was awesome. It was.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess so for the people listening who don't, or I guess didn't know what the tournament was, it was more of a species based tournament than a size based tournament, right? So really any different species you caught would go towards your total. Like you said, 3-inch brook trout was clutch, right? So for the people listening, it was kind of, you said 25. Shayna just texted me this a couple days ago how many species there were, and I forgot again. But
yeah, 25 species, and like you say, it's perfect when there's no size requirement, because like I say, like being from where we're from, it's not easy if you had to go catch a certain size grayling or a certain size whatever. So
Yeah.
it made it easy for anyone to join too, which I think was a huge part of it. Obviously, there wasn't as many people as like there wasn't a full field by any means, but still having the format set up where it doesn't take necessarily a huge fish to be submitted, I think we'll do a good job for future events to happen for sure.
Yeah, so I guess this was a tournament once again put on by My Catch by Anglers Atlas, who I work for part time as well with Shayna, and this was the first of its kind. We've done like lots of other tournaments, I guess, where different species would count towards your total, but this one those were size based, and those would maybe only be like say like the three trout that were in the three species of trout that were like kind of thing. So with this one, this was kind of the first of its kind of basically seeing, like you said, 10 days that get spanned over 2 weekends there, and just trying to see how many species you could knock off the list, and size didn't matter, and like you said, that helped a ton there. So, and I guess she actually just announced another one, kind of side note here, announced another one for Ontario. So for any of our Ontario listeners, there's going to be a similar style tournament coming your way soon. I think there's a early bird prize if you register before August 3rd. So they'll have one of those, same idea, except I'm sure there will be a ton more species in Ontario because they're lucky to have, like, I don't even know how many species they have here. I think the typical note for most of them of like catchable sport fish species here, I think there was a Facebook group about 27 species. But the reason the number was a bit different for the My Catch tournament is dealt with regulations. So all the tournaments that we're running have the correct paperwork and licensing and stuff like that. So like I know you're not allowed to target sturgeon specifically in Saskatchewan, and therefore you obviously can't tournament fish them either. So that one went out, and I think was whitefish on the list. I don't think they were, right?
Yeah, yeah, whitefish was.
Oh, they were. Okay.
Yeah, sturgeon, smallmouth bass, and then catfish. They.
Oh, your guys' bread and butter. We're gonna get
I
into
know,
that too,
I
but
know. Yeah,
yeah,
so there was only three species that were ineligible, right? So you could go and
yeah,
target absolutely pretty much anything, which helped too. Only having three not allowed. Zach did catch an almost 50-inch sturgeon during the event though, which
yeah.
which was pretty awesome.
Well,
But
that
yeah,
was on some light tackle too, right?
yeah, desperately trying to
Yeah,
catch a sucker, and we hammered three sturgeon in an hour. Craziness.
yeah. So I guess we don't want to. I guess with it being that like we don't want to get into like the I guess spots too specifically kind of thing, and understandably so. But how much time did you guys spend on the river? I guess like in that Saskatoon area, because I know that would have been knocking off quite a few,
Oh, yeah,
or could have been.
we did a 3 day or a 3 or 4 day trip, and we left from Grenfell in the evening, and we went up to Lady Lake, just north of Priestville, trying to catch trout. And Zach caught a brown trout at like 10:30 at night or something crazy. And then what we did is we went from there. We went to the Narrow Hills, trying to
Yeah,
knock off as many trout as possible. Then once it got to the river, it was like it was our hardest fishing by far. Like the river,
yeah,
I think they said something about the snow melt or something kind of threw the fish off, and we spent a full day, and then we slept on the river overnight and caught a couple burbot, and then we couldn't catch a silver red horse sucker, so we went home,
no, yeah,
had to work, and then had to come back. And we actually caught the silver red horse at Katepwa, believe it or not. And then went back to the river for the last day, trying to close it out. And we caught some huge goldeye, and then only two or three species left, so we couldn't quite take the win. But Zach, yeah, tied 19 species, and the river has how many species, right? So like for
yeah.
future tournaments, that's where you want to be, like multi-species mecca, pretty much.
Oh yeah, when you can get there when the river's on, like the number of species you can run into, it's actually pretty cool because lots of it is, as many people know, it's just sitting there with a pickle rig for a lot of it, right? And so
Yeah.
you never know what's going to come across. And like we've seen in lots of like the 39 hours videos and stuff, the pickle rig, there's really nothing that comes close to it for a multi-species standpoint, right? You never know what you're going to get. So that, yeah, definitely would be a good place to start and at least try and knock off as many as you can. But just like that, you can't target a specific species. So like you said, trying to catch the red horse, it's like, well, I can't just put something on that, like say you want to go for trout, put on a little spoon, you know you're probably going to get trout, right? Like it's just it's different like that. But I mean, that's another great part about fishing is a surprise. You know, you never know, right? So oh, can you still hear me?
Yep, I got you.
Oh, okay, I'll just cut that part out. It just froze there for a sec, but yeah, we're good to go there. So I guess you had how many days out of the 10 did you actually fish?
I think we fished 4.5 days or 5 days. Um, we had like obviously the tire problem. That's whatever. Um, but yeah, the days we fished, I mean, it was like pretty extreme fishing. Like we literally on that trip up north, we just slept in the car, like because you're fishing in the narrow hills. There's not really anywhere to stay, right? So
Yeah,
you're just kind of, but the narrow hills, like there, for an example, like if you're trying to do multi-species, that whole area like is beautiful. Plus, you got like Pipbro with every trout species and
yep.
the Jam Lakes, and so it makes for some nice sightseeing, like apart from fishing. So it's definitely a really good place to check out if you haven't already.
Oh yeah, and there's so many. It's I always like to mention it when people go up north. I don't know, was it your first time up north like that?
Yeah, like fishing wise, I've been to Jan
Yeah,
and stuff, but never have I been, hitting as many lakes as possible. So it was a
yeah,
pretty cool
yeah.
experience for sure.
Well, and that's the thing. There's so many people that always like, oh, Saskatchewan, so this, so that, and it's usually a negative, kind of derogatory thing about the province, right? But I was like, if you're willing to get off the number one, even go like 45 minutes either side on number one, and you can actually start to see some stuff. And then especially once you once you get up there, and basically once you cross that bridge of PA and you keep heading north, it's a whole different world up there that not sadly not enough people have seen, and then they just get this idea of Saskatchewan. But no, it's definitely a great place to be. And yeah, like you said, being down here in southern Saskatchewan, yeah, we've got like our handful of species, but once you get up north like that, there's so many more species or really catchable species that are added to that list, right? And so, like you said, traveling from Estevan all the way up to there in that 4 or 5 days of fishing, that's pretty crazy. But I mean, it was worth the grind. It looks like you guys had a great time and everything, and who knows? And I'm sure there'll be more, right? And then you guys are just getting ready. I'd be scared to be fishing against you guys in the next one for sure.
Yeah, like when we did that trip, like the places we saw, even like fishing wise is one thing, but if you're going for a trip, to do a little bit of sightseeing and stuff too, like it was definitely a trip to remember. And like you say, like once you cross that PA bridge, like species wise, it's incredible, especially if you can get up there in the springtime where
Yeah.
where everything is still kind of fired up. Like it makes for some pretty exciting fishing for sure.
Well, and I guess that's a perfect transition into, like you said, get there in the spring. Usually things are shallower, and that's where it comes into the shore fishing aspect of things, right? And that's, like we said earlier, kind of your your bread and butter there. I guess being in southern Saskatchewan, that's one thing. Unless you're on the river, I've kind of like just want to do like some of the fly fishing and stuff. Even I found that the shore fishing in a lot of places is pretty difficult, right?
Yeah, like the way I see it though is like for a lot of people who are like entry level, I guess, into fishing, like shore fishing, especially like you say with the elusive pickerel rig,
Hmm.
like it makes for some fishing where you like for first time fishing for someone, you don't even have to be casting and reeling constantly. Like you can cast your rod out and kind of sit and with that being said, in the springtime, like honestly, with a pickerel rig, you can catch some crazy fish that or like 30-inch walleye, for example. Like we caught quite a few this spring just bait fishing. So I think
Hmm.
for anybody trying to just get into fishing, like shore fishing does present some really really good opportunities if you can kind of hit it right or do it in spring or whenever you can. It definitely can be very good.
Yeah, and I think that's something that could be really useful to lots of listeners, especially a lot of the people. There's so many newer people into fishing with COVID and everything happening, right? So I think that kind of coming up here in a conversation, this could be really useful for a lot of the people that might be newer and you haven't gone into the big investment of getting a boat, or even like lots of people, if you didn't grow up on a lake, it's even if you're just getting a 14, 16 foot aluminum, that's a big change of scenery for you, right? If you're going out with that. So there is, like you see in tons of places, you go by the causeway, Buffalo Pound, there's people there all the time at the dam, or or you head to Deef, there's people lining the shores all the time there. So I think maybe if we could kind of just get into some of the insight about what you think are some of the most important things, I guess, for shore fishing, I think that could be really useful for some people.
Yeah, I mean, like if you're trying to target fish, and I'm just saying in general, but if you can go to any sort of, river mouth or anything like in the southern region here, the chain lakes, right? You have like 5 lakes where they all have mouths, and the mouth is basically just where the lake comes in and through the river and then leaves the lake eventually into the following lake or river or wherever it may be. But yeah, finding those little spots where the fish might be moving in to spawn or trapping bait fish along a shore or something, I think those are, those present some opportunities to catch all sorts of species, right? Everything in the lake is going to be using the inflow and outflow in the spring and throughout the summer, honestly, too. I mean, like today it's the middle of June and I just went and caught a couple of catfish this afternoon. So there's always fish moving throughout the mouth, and that's for anywhere in the province or wherever you're going. It's the mouth would be a great starting point, I think, or any other dam or whatever it may be to kind of draw some fish in and get them within a good striking distance from shore for sure.
Yeah, and I guess since like this is we could be pertaining this to some of the newer people. One thing I kind of always wish that there was not to the extent of hunting, but there was some kind of like introduction kind of thing. Maybe if it like because they can tell probably if it's your first time purchasing a license or not, right? Just something to kind of be like, I don't know, the number of times I see on Facebook like they're in their kitchen with a fish they brought home. They're like, "What kind of fish is this?" And I'm like, "Well, if you didn't know at the lake when you caught it, you probably shouldn't have been taking it home because you don't know what it could have been. It could have been protected. It could be just terrible table fare, like all these things, right?" So I kind of think that it would maybe be useful for us to kind of maybe talk about some of the things that we think for beginners, like you're going to want, like the number of people that just don't know that you need pliers, right? Like especially with the amount of pike that are here in Saskatchewan, seemingly everywhere, right? Like you don't want to be getting your fingers in there. You don't want to be making it any worse on the fish than it has to be. So like something like having some pliers. I mean, you guys have the big nets for some of the fish you guys are catching there, right? But what else would you suggest there?
Yeah, I mean, like that's a great point that you just made because, for example, like my first time fishing, like I had no idea what I was doing, right? So I think now with COVID coming up and whatnot, and everybody kind of trying to get out and try something new, I think is great. But what else I think is great is that some of the YouTubers, especially around here now, are like starting to make a lot of videos and really kicking them out. And I think compared to 5-10 years ago to now, I think like those videos on YouTube provide an awesome outlet for a new beginner person to go try to learn something about what they're going to be fishing for. As you say, you don't want to be coming home and you've got a sturgeon in your sink and you're trying to fillet it and posting on Facebook or something that's like it's proper. You're right though, like it's proper for people to be able to go out there and have at least basic knowledge on proper techniques to provide good fisheries for generations to come and not be harming it without knowing. Even like it's some people just don't know, but having the outlet to be able to have fundamental, I guess, fishing common knowledge is definitely something that you're right needs to be addressed for sure.
Yeah, and I think the important thing is everyone needs to remember. My dad always says it when we'll talk about things like this, but everyone started in the same place, right? So don't be afraid to ask questions. Yeah, there's some people that forget that they once knew nothing about whatever topic it is, right? But there's a lot of good people out there. Like you can reach out to really me, Brandon, or Rylan, right? Like you can reach out to people like that, and they'd be willing to tell you because we care about the fishery, we care about things like that, and why wouldn't we want to help someone out that's trying to get into it, right? And trying to learn how to do things the proper way and whatnot. So like just I guess just remember that everyone starts from the same place, so shouldn't be too afraid to reach out. And like you said, that knowledge that you can gain, even like some people start off knowing nothing and then maybe they go out with someone who's been doing it for years, and yeah, that learning curve is way quicker than lots of other people's. But I think just like you said, the YouTube videos, especially around here, have been helping a lot. Like you see lots of the bass fishing videos in the States. Well, like pliers and nets aren't really too common to practice there, right? Usually it's like flipping the bass on the shore into the boat. You can pop that hook out and you don't need pliers. But then pretty well every video that you see that they've got one of their jerk baits stuck in their hand as well, they're trying to deal with a pike and they didn't have pliers or anything like that. And it's just so different, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think for sure too, and now more so with all the angling, pressure on the lakes, like the guys who are making the videos are even promoting like you guys are with your social media, like the angling practice, I guess, is at an all time high for sure. Like if you watch, even like Pokey's Tackle Shop here in Regina, they are starting to do some videos too. Like Clayton Schick's got videos, and when those guys are posting the videos, they are like demonstrating, proper tools and equipment you want to be using when handling fish. So I think that's going to go a long ways, and if other guys can kind of come on board with that, and like you say, like there's a lot of anglers in Saskatchewan especially that are like 40 years of experience, hammering huge fish, but sometimes an overlooked thing is just basic, handling a fish, because if someone does catch, that 34, 35-inch walleye, and they're unsure on how to handle it, right? Like I think people just need to, and I'm not talking bad on anybody on any, but just having that knowledge on keeping our resource strong is definitely super key.
Yeah, and I think that's something we're definitely seeing a huge change, right? Like lots of people are, whether it's trying to stay above that 30-foot range, which maybe don't have to worry about as much on shore, right? But like trying to worry about that, or I think one of the biggest things is like it would be lots of, I guess, grandparents and older people that are kind of teaching maybe their grandkids or and stuff like that, right? And so they kind of still have some of those older ways of thinking, like when they catch a pike, it gets grabbed by the two eyes instead of like handled with like a hand on the tail and maybe one in the belly, right? Like there's those kind of things that were just common practice back then that we learned, hey, like that's not maybe a way we should do things. Like when we had Eve on from BC there with the sturgeon, like he was telling me like they didn't know they've got cradles on the side of the boat. The fish, they're a hardy fish as it is, but they still take such good care of them. Like you said, they used, like years ago, they used to get tied up by the tail with the rope, and they get taken ashore for a picture, right? And like he said, like they know that a sturgeon, as long as their gills are staying wet, they can stay on the shore for quite a while. But they're like, why would we want to do that? That's just another chance for something bad to happen, right? So things change, and there's always new things to learn. So us also talking about, well, you should have a good knowledge and stuff like that of going out, we also realize that things are always changing and people are always going to have different opinions, I guess, on things. But there is like a common ground, like you said, with Clayton in some of his videos. He'll talk about, well, maybe you should do things this way. It takes care of the fish a bit better, especially with like the ice fishing videos, keeping them wet, stuff like that, right? So I think there's definitely lots out there. We don't we also don't think that everyone is maybe as diehard as we are with a lot of this, right? So you also understand that they don't just sit there and watch fishing videos and just soak in knowledge all day long as well. So I do realize that we're on the far end of the scale for, as I guess, as extreme goes, and there's a lot more casual people. But yeah, anyways, I guess with that we could kind of, do you want to just talk about general practices for shore fishing, or do you want to get into the catfish a bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's general shore fishing though. Yeah, like if lots of people are going out without a clue or their first time fishing, I mean, like in general, like throwing out a pickerel rig, for example, is something that often gets kind of joked about. But if you're just trying to go out and catch maybe your first fish or something, I mean, like doing some research on a pickerel rig, like you can use whatever, worms, leeches, minnows, and like we know, you can catch some good fish. Or even if you do some research about a slip bobber, that's something that's gaining a lot of popularity. Being able to take some kids out fishing and watch a bobber go under is definitely exciting, and does a great job of kind of getting those kids hooked and turning into future diehard fishermen like we are, right? So I believe there's a lot of ways. I mean, I'm not the most experienced fisherman, obviously, but fishing a lot from shore, you do kind of find these techniques that are easy for anyone to do that can also catch you a lot of fish. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
it's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that gets overlooked. You always see guys in their big boats, and you're like, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to go fishing like that. And no, don't get me wrong, it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of other things you can do when you are on the water, but you're just a prime example, I guess, of you can like some of the even the size of the fish you catch, right? And just from talking to you, the numbers that you get into sometimes as well. Like lots of times, those areas that you're fishing, say whatever, will give you how far you think you can cast out.
Probably like maybe 70, 80 yards, kind of at the
Yeah,
max. But
yeah. So,
yeah,
oh, sorry. I was
70
gonna say. So, how often do you think that 70, 80 yards is totally forgotten by guys in boats, right?
yeah, for sure. I mean, like, don't get like lots of guys on boats. You know, they're dialed. They've got spot on a spot. But like we know, like not everybody has the access to go burn 50 miles down the lake to go catch these fish, right? So, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, fishing from shore is like there's a lot of good fishing to be had, and for someone who does see, you know, those huge boats, maybe they think, oh well, it's so far out of reach to go catch a big fish, but honestly, it's very doable from shore, and it's something everybody can do. So it's like I say, it's overlooked, but it's something that is slowly gaining popularity, and a lot of people can do it. So it's great for the sport.
Okay. So I guess just in talking to you, maybe we'll get a little bit more in depth or a bit more detail here. So you kind of mentioned some stuff with slip bobbing. Maybe like neither of us here are claiming to be experts or pros by any mean. We're both weekend warriors, except Riley maybe gets to fish during the week a little more. But I guess it's worked though. These things that we're talking about, we found it worked for us. So I guess why wouldn't it work for someone else, right? So what have you kind of found through slip bobbing? Like what's some details you could give someone who's never really done much of that before?
Well, the slip bobber is great because your bait's not on bottom, right? If you're fishing, for example, offshore, maybe it's off your dock at your cabin or whatever, you're gonna have a lot of weeds, most likely. So the slip bobber basically it gives you first of all an indicator on top of the water to watch, like you watch a float basically drop under the water when you get a bite. Plus, then it keeps your bait off bottom, so it keeps the hook or your bait away from the weeds. Um, a good thing to add, I guess, would be when you're fishing with a slip bobber, you're most likely just going to use a single hook or a jig. Like you're not going
Mm-hmm.
to be putting a spoon or like a five of diamonds under a slip bobber for anybody who's it's your first time. So there's a lot of great videos on YouTube you can watch. But just as a starting point, yeah, like a single hook with some split shots and or a jig with whatever live bait you're going to be using would be kind of how you're going to fish it for sure.
Yeah, and I guess so for some of the newer people when we are talking about live bait, at least here in Saskatchewan, live bait would consist of your worms and your leeches, right? There's no live minnow use or anything like that here. A little different, like in Manitoba and Ontario and stuff. But yeah, that's just live bait. It kind of gets mixed up with some of the other things in other provinces. But yeah, that's something that for sure. And I guess the pretty well everyone who's kind of gotten into fishing have all seen the typical red and white bobber, right? This is just more of a modern version of it. Basically, looks a little different, but what it does is that white and red bobber, once you reel that up to your rod tip, it's not moving. Whereas a slip bobber uses a little knot that stops it at whatever depth you want, and so you're able to reel that past your top eyelet there. Your bobber will go back kind of down the line a bit, so you're able to fight that fish a bit better because sometimes you are doing it a bit deeper, say 15 feet, right? And you're not going to land a fish when you've got your red and white bobber and then 15 feet of line with your fish on the other end, right? So it's a little different there, but I guess I don't want you to have to give away too many of your secrets here, but if you were going to do more of an active approach from shore, what's something you'd look at for I guess most of the lakes you'd go to?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously you can throw the tackle box at them pretty much with anything, but like small crankbaits or and stuff like that. And a lot of you don't need to go buy a $15 crankbait. You know what I'm saying? Like you can go and fish a lot of go to Walmart or go wherever to find those baits and if you're fishing from shore and it's not too deep, well, you don't need a crankbait with a big lip on it and getting snagged and whatnot. But Spoons for pike obviously are really good, and casting jigs even with paddle tails. Obviously the 13 fishing paddle tails seem to do you guys
There you
pretty
go.
catching the
Yeah.
walleyes. But yeah, no, like there's plenty. You can throw basically anything, and there are a great amount of videos, explaining that. But crankbait, spoon, a jig and a twister tail even, are pretty staple baits to use. And even from shore, if it's really weedy and there's pike, throwing a frog or something can make for some really exciting fishing from shore too. So there's no, one-dimensional lure to use from shore, but those are, you do have a good selection, and that can catch all sorts of stuff from shore, like we did in the
Yeah.
tournament there.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I think like you mentioned there, the top water, it's hit and miss, right? But when that is popping off, I went and caught my first smallie here, I think last week, 2 weekends ago now, and but the first one that blew up, it was about a probably 24-inch pike, and it blew up about 3 feet out of the water with my top water, and I hadn't caught a smallmouth at that point, so I was kind of a little ticked that I was gonna have to deal with this pike now, but I was like, man, that's crazy. Like if you were actually trying to do that, like I think that a lot of people would find that pretty entertaining because you see it a lot in the bass scene and stuff, which is a ton of stuff from shore as well. But it's not something that you'd see as much up here in Saskatchewan because like really you go to a tackle shop, there's not a ton of selection for top water as there would be in some other places, right? But definitely an overlooked one. I'm pretty sure every tackle box out there, I don't know for how many years, has at least one frog type bait in it. Like, I don't whether it's one of the ones where the tails are spinning on it or your typical floaty frog there. But yeah, I think that's a staple that it gets overlooked as well.
Yeah. I mean, watching a fish blow up on a frog is something where if that's your first time fishing, maybe that is what gets you hooked. You know what I mean? Like Zach and I, when we went to Estevan for our largemouth bass, that's what we had, the frog, and watching that was my first largemouth I'd ever caught, and
Yeah,
watching it blow up on a frog, kind of you see why those guys down south are so addicted to their bass. It's exhilarating
yeah.
watching that and setting the hook into a big bass for sure.
No, yeah, and it's actually I was when I first caught them, I was surprised how hard they fought. Right, like I know there was all the craze, and I thought most of it in the States was to do with the fact of how accessible they were. Like they seem to be in every golf course pond, every backyard dugout kind of thing, right? So I was like, this is why is there's so many people can fish for them. But when you actually hook into one for the size they are, the fight that they put up, and even pulling some drag and stuff, like I was like, this is this is pretty entertaining. It's too bad it's only at one lake in the province, but yeah, no, they're a blast for sure. But I guess maybe now we'll transition into I guess if some people haven't seen it, you did a video with Lane Meyer, one of our previous guests here, two-time guest, only two-time guest so far on the podcast. You did a video with him for pokies. That it was for pokies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of highlighting the channel catfish here in Saskatchewan. I know for some people it can kind of be a touchy subject, so we're not going to get any specifics for like location and stuff like that. I guess just know Rylan's doing it all from shore. I guess you can figure that out. But kind of I guess maybe like how are you targeting them kind of thing? Because I know it's a bit different than sometimes just a pickerel rig, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the catfish like, are only accessible in the southern part of Saskatchewan anyway. Obviously, Manitoba, as you've been to, like Lockport
Yeah,
and stuff, catfish seem to be everywhere. But yeah, so basic for our catfish, if you do plan on targeting them in Saskatchewan or wherever, it's called a sliding rig basically, and all it is a weight that you actually thread your line through, and then you want to tie it to a swivel, a barrel swivel, and then you want to use a stronger line, maybe a 25 pound braid to a bigger hook, and then you can use all sorts of funky bait. I mean, chicken liver was really good, and soaking that in all sorts of different kind of mixes and sauces. Or shrimp was another good one with Lane. We did quite a bit of shrimp, and then sucker obviously is a great way. Obviously dead sucker, and cutting up small cubes, and there for a prime example for easy shore fishing. We're not casting for those catfish. Like we are casting, but once you cast, your rod's sitting there, right? It's
yeah,
bait fishing. So for that, being able to watch like honestly, most of our fishing did happen in the evening and into the night. Sort of to sit in the lawn chair and watch a sunset and catch huge catfish. I mean, our biggest catfish was just shy of 38 inches, and a large majority were right around 20 pounds. You can definitely watch that video through the Pokies website or YouTube channel, and yeah, and everything that you want us to know about catfish, targeting wise, is on there. And we did Lane caught a lot of fish. I caught a lot of fish, and it obviously makes for some good fishing, and more so, it's another bucket list species, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned that group on Facebook, the 28 species or whatever. A lot of guys came from all over the province this spring to come target them, and everybody was successful. So it's something that is close to the city. A lot of the lakes in the chain lakes have them and have a lot of them. So it's great fishing for big fish too. I mean, a 20-pound catfish, as puts up a good fight, and it's a lot of fun. But with that being said, though, there is a new regulation coming out next year for only one catfish to be retained, under 24 inches, I believe. So
Right.
that's definitely something to watch out for. They are great table fare, but to make sure you're up to your regulations if you're targeting them in the near future, so you're not keeping any illegal fish or anything.
Right. Oh, so you can actually, could you retain them right now as well?
Yeah, you can retain
Oh.
2 catfish a person, any size.
Oh.
So yeah, so
I didn't know that.
yeah, and they are great eating. Deep fried catfish are up there, but you don't need two 35-inch catfish a night to be taking home. That's a little bit
No.
insane.
No, not at all. Well, and I guess like you mentioned, like yes, I went to Lockport and caught the channels there. We were actually talking to. I'll give it a shout out because I love the store. I think it was the Smoking Fish right at Lockport there. It's not too far from the river, and the guy that was working there, I don't know if he owns it or not, but he's actually from Shaunavon here in Saskatchewan. So he was saying that the ones here, I guess they're a bit different than say the ones down in like I think what is it in like Louisiana and stuff like that. He said the ones here, at least at Lockport, get a lot bigger and they're kind of more oily and stuff, so they're not really as comparable table fare wise to the ones down south in the States. But because we were asking, do people keep them and eat them, like is it a common practice? And he talked more about how when the walleye start running the greenbacks there, that's kind of where everyone goes crazy. But I didn't even actually think about keeping cats. I just figured that you couldn't, just because of maybe the lower numbers and lower area that they are in Saskatchewan. But I guess that's good to know that I guess the regulations are changing, right?
Yeah, I mean, today, for example, I was catching catfish that were 4 inches long, and a lot of them. So it's good to see the population is there and striving. Like throughout the river, you can catch 100 catfish in a day, pretty like
Yeah.
during the summer, which is cool. But yeah, like Lockport, for example, catfish capital of the world. Those things are like 40 inches. You see guys catch 40, 42 inch
Yeah.
catfish. So that's crazy. And here in Saskatchewan, you're right, low numbers, but they're definitely on the rise, and hopefully see some big fish in the future for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that's different too. Is like we took my boat over there into Lockport, and where we were fishing, what was it? I think it was like 15 feet deep, but we've got some heavier inline weights there, and so we were down to the bottom pretty quick. Like we weren't that far out, whereas you guys were bombing out some of those baits, right? So I think your guys' fight might even have been more fun, other
Yeah.
than we had some current that they were playing with. But at least with your guys' fight, you've got all that extra line out, right? Like we like our lines were pretty close to like just below the boat lots of the time. So the fight was just a lot of a vertical fight where the fish feels way heavier, I guess, but and just constantly their tails were just constantly hitting the line like nonstop in the whole fight. So you always kept thinking that you're popping off basically. But yeah, definitely I'll have to come there and try one of those when you're actually kind of way further out, a lot more line, because the fights in those videos are just peel and drag like crazy, and really the size difference. Like I think what was our biggest? Our biggest was maybe 36 inches, I think. They're stupid chunky there, but I think we ended up, me and my buddy, in 45 minutes we caught 5 master anglers there. So maybe the average size is a lot bigger there too. But yeah, like you said, some guys are pulling out some absolute monsters out of there too, and I can see why, because the number of boats that were there was pretty crazy, and then lots of guides out there, right? But I guess you don't have to. You hear about these places, like I think Jay has a couple videos there, right? Going for the channel cats, and so that's what I was like. Oh, I just got to head all the way to Manitoba. There, it's about a 6 hour drive for me for a long weekend, and target those. But really, they're right in our home province here. And I think it makes it a bit more special, right? When you're able to to kind of get those.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, 20 minutes away from my doorstep. You can't complain when you can go catch those fish. And you're right, though. Definitely Manitoba cats gain a lot more popularity. But it helps, right, when those high-profile guys are going and catching those huge fish and displaying, a 37-inch catfish or something crazy. And it's when you can go and, like you say, catch 5 master anglers
Yeah.
in a short order. And that's one thing, too. The Master Angler program in Manitoba, for sure, how many guys go there, right, from Saskatchewan to go chase all those species, right? So in a
Yeah.
way, it kind of takes away from the multi-species scene here in our own province. But like with those tournaments too, like you say, like for my catch there, like walleye wars, for example, like when guys can go and fish for walleyes and win, $7,500, 10 grand, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Those are great for keeping people within our province. Obviously, walleye wars are in Manitoba now, but
Yeah.
having those my catch tournaments across a good chunk of central Saskatchewan, Ontario, Alberta,
Yeah.
Saskatchewan, so it does a good job of getting people kind of involved in those tournaments, and fishing for some money is always fun. So I think those for sure are gonna really skyrocket here in the near future for sure.
Yeah. And actually, I know for sure one of the winning fish of walleye wars. It was maybe like walleye wars two, 2 or 3 maybe, was caught on shore. So like that's that's big money for fishing on shore. And one thing I kind of wanted to come back to there when you're talking about what rig you're using for the catfish is a catfish rig is going to probably run you like $3. The pickle rig a lot of the time is 99 cents. You can upgrade the hooks, I guess, if you want, but like it's not expensive. Like you're saying, you don't need a $15 crankbait sometimes for, like, I know that is something that can produce quite well offshore, and I've seen it myself. But like if you're just trying to get started, right, like it's pretty crazy. When we were in Selkirk, I don't know how many pickle rigs I bought because they're 99 cents, and I was like, this is crazy. And then I never really look at pickle rigs in the store because I don't shore fish a ton, and I see this is really just the normal price. It seems like lots of the time, right? And like weights don't run you too much, and then your most expensive part is going to be the hooks. But you can go to Cabela's and get a catfish rig for $3 with the hooks. It has everything you need. You just need to tie it onto your line and get some bait, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, can't go
Yeah.
wrong there.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I mean, that's why I think shore fishing, especially with a pickerel rig or some sort of bait rig, is so easy for someone because, yeah, for example, like to go and, obviously guided trips are a really good way to kind of get your taste in fishing. But if you're trying to do something, on the lower end of the budget, going to get a $20 rod and a couple pickerel rigs and some worms, it's not a big investment. And then it's you only go up, right? Like we all
Yeah.
started somewhere, exactly. So to get into the sport of fishing, it doesn't take a lot, which is nice. And there's shore fishing opportunities literally everywhere across the province. So it makes for some a good way to start the sport in my mind for sure.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And like you said, there's shore fishing opportunities everywhere. I guess one of the things to mention is just make sure. I know, like, whatever you want to talk about, like crown and water access and stuff like that, but maybe just make sure that you're also not on private property or going through private property sometimes, because there be some people, like, we don't want to make people mad and then have them also not like fishermen around the area because they always got people walking through their areas. But that's just a little side note. That's just some people might take offense to people walking through their stuff. So I guess just always know where you are. But like you said, there's every lake, every river has a shore, and so it's
Yeah.
it's always accessible, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And another, I guess, side note to mention for if you are starting to get into fishing, like to keep proper distance away from, say, a dam or something like that, right? Where,
Yeah.
just to avoid snagging fish or seagulls or, anything, right? Just 25 meters is kind of the common thing there. But
Yeah.
other than
Yeah,
that,
and
yeah,
there's usually signs there, right? So just
yeah.
keep an eye out for those because or fishing on bridges a lot of time, maybe all the time, isn't allowed. I know I know lots of places it's always no fishing on the bridge, especially like I know the causeway, right? I'm sure a lot of people would love to drop line around the bridge there, but you also got to kind of worry about your safety as well when you've got a highway right behind you, right? Like you're literally on the shoulder of the highway there, so kind of be careful with that. It's a little bit different possibilities for things to go wrong when you're shore fishing compared to a boat, but you just got to be cognizant of that. But I think one thing that you mentioned is kind of important is like I know with you, you're always out there grinding. Like I think every time I've talked to you, you're on the way, you're at the lake, or you're just coming back from the from the lake, right? So um, that's a big thing is you can do all the research, you can have the perfect plan, but until you actually go out there and kind of roll with the punches and start learning that way, that's the biggest thing, right? Is putting in that time. And like you said, you can go out with a guide, right? Like we've had Lane on here twice, as I mentioned before, and he's got the mountain man there, and they do the guiding. I think maybe lots of guiding was more of like a typical for people not from around here to come and do that fishing, right? But I think with COVID, just in talking to Lane, kind of like realized like there's a lot of a local market too, and it's a great way if maybe you haven't fished a ton is to go out with someone who really knows what they're doing, and that's your chance. Yeah, you're gonna pay for it, but you're gonna get a day to remember. You're gonna learn a ton. Like those guys, when I went out with Eve when we went sturgeon fishing, which you're gonna be going to do soon, like I learned so much. Whether it was boat control or it was how he's lining things up, what he was doing with his rigs, his rods, like all that stuff, right? So even if like it doesn't break the bank to go out with them, you're helping support local, you're helping support the industry, and you're gonna learn a lot. You're gonna get more knowledge than what you paid for, right? So I think that's a huge thing, and they're gonna put you on some big fish, right? Like, and I guess like obviously you weren't doing the guiding, but you took Lane out there. He's got the guiding experience, and then you were putting him on big fish, and he looked just as happy as lots of people on his boat are to pull in a 30-inch walleye. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great point there. Like guiding, for example, if you're trying to learn something new and you're right, it's supporting local. Obviously the border is open here in August. So
mm-hmm.
you'll have those guides, running full tilt. But yeah, having a guide, like for example, Eve's there in BC, to learn all that knowledge about the sturgeon or to go catch a 32 inch walleye with Lane or any of that, it's that's memories of a lifetime, right? That's gonna pretty much guaranteed get you hooked on fishing. So to have those guys, putting people on big fish and not only big fish, but just the experience in general, right? Like to have a shore lunch or to experience something you've never experienced in a day is something that goes a lot further than just catching a big fish, right? Those are
Yeah.
memories and that just go forever. So that's definitely a really good thing to check out for sure.
Yeah, and just like I mentioned kind of near the start there, like we've said a couple times on here that everyone starts from somewhere, and yeah, someone might have someone they can go with that really accelerates their learning curve. Well, that could be your chance, right? Like you can go out with someone who is going to be one of the best people to learn from. They're cognizant of all like handling of fish, kind of what you want to do for when you do get a fish, how to get a fish, and all these other things, right? And so it's no burden to them to be teaching you that stuff when you're out there because it's just helping advance angling as a sport even more and more, right? So definitely something to check out, and you can look up Lane and find all that stuff there if you'd like to do that. But yeah, no, I think lots of opportunities in Saskatchewan. I know we're both pretty pumped for the Master Angler program to come through here with the Sask Wildlife Federation. Hopefully, be seeing that soon, and I'm sure you plan to crush lots of fish there for the Master Angler program.
Yeah, I think the Master Angler program, obviously you see in Manitoba, guys are 30 species specialists, which is crazy. But I think here in Saskatchewan too, even for the industry in Saskatchewan, getting people to come and fish our waters, obviously you don't want to have spots getting drilled or whatever, and fish being harmed. But a good thing that he mentioned in the tournament there, James Villanova put it on, is that there will be special regulations to meet in order for a catch to be approved, I guess you could say.
Hmm.
So proper fish handling, no gill holds, no eye holds, no bleeding fish. So
Yeah.
I think there is another way where if someone's going to be getting into fishing to ensure safe fish handling is going to go, as we know, it's going to do wonders for the future fishery. So having those rules in place, as well as just how many fish to target, right? It'll do a lot of good things for the province and the multi-species angling that is to be had here. So it'll be good
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, exactly. And I think he did mention, if I remember correctly, that he plans to have like the SAS fishing guide right in the app there, so you can view that as well. I think that's a big thing. It's gonna let, at least even just for letting you know your limits and stuff like that. Like I was when I was just up north, like we talked about in the previous episode, we were going to a lake and thought, oh, maybe we'll keep like a lake trout or two because my one buddy can't eat whitefish, so he wanted to try and smoke some Lakers. So we are going out there, and I was like, oh, like I don't know what I don't keep very often, so I was like, I don't know what the limit is. I don't know what the limit is on this specific lake potentially, because as we know, some lakes are different. And then I just didn't know, like, also, like, say for walleye, I think you can only keep one over 55 centimeters, and I'm pretty sure the lake trout are only one over, I want to say 65, but don't quote me on that. But it's just important to have that guide. So what I did eventually was the next time we went there, I made sure to look at the guide, and then I knew, right? And having that on that app would be huge because you could look at that really anytime. It's a lot quicker. So
Yeah.
just again, another important thing to know.
Yeah, and without cell service too. So if you
Yeah,
are out in the bush and you're trying to fish a new lake, yeah, it's good to have, like you say, if you're clueless, you don't want to just kind of guess and then get yourself in any trouble, or keep, yeah, like a protected fish on a certain body of water. So that's
yeah,
definitely a big help that will go a long way, not only on new water, but just in general, just for people to know if they do want to try to keep some fish for, like, even smoking a fish, just trying something
yep.
new. For sure, it'll be good.
Yeah, well, exactly. Just like you talked about after the tournament, how you went and caught some quillback, which is not very common at all. Like you can't keep those, but I'm sure lots of people will catch one of those. And be like, I don't know. Like most experienced guys wouldn't even know what that was, right? So just always good to, I guess, have that knowledge. But we've had you here for almost an hour, coming up here soon. So I guess, was there any other things you wanted to get off your chest here while you had the pod?
I'm not too sure. I mean, I think it was good though to kind of discuss things that, like on the pod, you have all these big name guys who can catch fish anyway. But for a new fisherman, or even trying to catch a new species, often, it's a little daunting to see, lane pulling 30-inch walleyes all the time, and it
Yeah,
kind of seems like such a far goal to go and catch all these huge fish, and like the pro guys do. But to just go out on your own, and to, get your foot in the water per se, and catch some fish is definitely something that, anybody can do. Like, for example, like, I think what a good thing is actually for Zach and I mean, Zach's only 21. I'm still like literally 18. So I think, like, to be able to, relate to even the younger audience, I would say, like a
yep.
lot of our, like, we had a TikTok video this winter that had like almost 30
Oh
million
yeah,
views there. And that was cool because that winter, like, lots of my buddies who never even thought about fishing were going out there, right? And they were asking, how do I do this? How do I do that? And a lot of people, like I say, would be scared to, ask, some of the big following guys what to do. But
yep,
it's better to ask someone, a question, and don't feel you're annoying, because if you go and you say you don't know what you're doing, and either you don't catch fish and it throws you off about the sport, or you keep a fish like that's not allowed. I mean, it's better to know to ask questions for sure, rather than just kind of going and figuring it out on your own if you don't have to. So,
yeah.
um, like, for like pokies, for example, in the city, like, how many big name guys go there, right? Even those guys
Oh
are
yeah,
fishermen. So if you
yep.
haven't even made a cast, like, that's a good spot to go, in store, even face to face, and just kind of, learn just a little, like, basic information on how to fish, and that'll go a long way to turn some of the new generation into some top tier anglers for sure.
Yeah, and like you said at Pokies, like I've gone in there, I bought both my flashes there for ice fishing, and I didn't know what I was getting into. You can research a lot of stuff, but a lot of things are just so foreign that you don't know, right? And they're always willing to help. And even like when we were talking about the flashes, he took me over to the corner of the counter there, and he's like, "These are one of the first flashes," and it was like I'd never even seen anything like this. But he's basically showing me like this is where things started, and this is where you can be right now today if you want to be, kind of thing. And so yeah, like people are always willing to help, and I think it was good to get you on as well, just with that shore fishing aspect, because that's what a lot of people are restricted to, kind of thing, is the shore fishing, right? So like I mean I started there as well. I started pretty well off my dock. Like there's times where there's one day I spent 6 hours fishing off the dock and didn't catch a single fish, right? And so we all started somewhere, and like you also said, talking to people. Like when I first started my fishing Instagram page, I think 2016, if I don't know if the DMs stay that long, the direct messages, but all I was doing was I wanted to catch, we'll say I wanted to catch carp on the fly. Every time I saw someone that had caught a carp on the fly, instantly direct message them, kind of try and learn as much as I could, right? And it's just, if you know what you want to do, like you got to be kind about it, right? Like most people are pretty good, but I've had some people too that are kind of like, where are you fishing? What it like, and just like I'm not gonna exactly tell you exactly where, or just like being so forward. And some of the, not myself as much, but some of the bigger guys, like I'm sure Clayton, his DMs are just full of messages, Jay and stuff like that. Like they got stuff that they're doing outside of their messages as well, right? Like they're busy guys. So
You don't have to be asking what spot, but yeah, just to get a good understanding of anything, just a good starting point, just so you're not going on some crazy long trip and having no starting point on how to even catch a fish.
Yeah.
But yeah, like there are a lot of videos, but being able to talk to someone who's experienced and can help you out is definitely a good starting point for sure.
Yeah, and yeah, the biggest thing is not to get discouraged. Like I still haven't caught it. Like that was back in 2016. I still have not caught a carp on the fly. Not that I've put a ton of time into it. Like actually, like I said, you got to actually go out and do it. I haven't gotten to that step as much. I have lots of the terminology and the research behind it, but I actually haven't put that in. But just don't get discouraged. Like the first time that I was able to catch carp on just normal spin setup, I think I did 10 different sessions of at least 2 hours apiece with one bite, and that was it. Like it's just about learning, right? And every time, at least with that, it was bait fishing, so I could sit there and maybe research some more stuff and be like, why am I not being successful, kind of thing, with this right now? But now I go out and it's at least one or two carp every time, and it's like you'll just slowly progress. But yeah, you just got to put in the time, right? And I think that's the biggest thing. Everyone that we've talked to on this pod pretty well, they're always putting in the time. Like it's crazy, and we do know that there's a lot more people that are a lot more casual too. But even then, just kind of try and remember like what you're doing, what worked, and the kind of areas you were in as well.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Like it is a lot of putting in the time for sure, and especially something where you haven't caught anything, right? But
Yeah,
yeah, research is a big thing. I mean, even for the most experienced guys, a lot of research, or for anyone just here and there doing some research. How am I going to catch this fish here and there? And this podcast, for example, does a good job. You have Gord Pies, John Hoy, or Shayna, even in the province.
yeah,
Like the sports research group, for example, even there, like they're constantly posting kind of different, how tos and kind of about different species. So there's lots of outlets to learn that stuff and to hopefully put people on some fish for sure. So it's
yeah.
like I say, the fishing in the province, especially now, I feel like is really climbing, and I see a lot of people, first timers out there. So to have that basic starting points, definitely, I think will go a long way for sure.
Yeah. Well, actually, this is something I wanted to ask you, and you just reminded me of it there. I saw some of the messages. It's usually if anyone's messaging the page, the Weekend Warriors page, it's usually Brandon answering it lots of the time. But I saw you'd messaged him saying that you listened to the pod while going. I think it was up north, right?
Yeah, yeah. We
Yeah.
drove through the night, and And the first thing we did as soon as we got in the car, we said, well, we gotta, how many episodes? 10 episodes to listen to. So
Yeah.
we were just filled. Our brains were on full capacity on that trip. But yeah, I mean, to have a bunch of different people across the industry doing all sorts of fishing is cool because, like for example, driving in the car, just turning it on quick and you don't
Yep.
even go to watch anything. Just listening and
No.
having it as background music is definitely something that can go a long way and it's for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Talking about everything, so it's not one dimensional. It's everything. So it's really cool to have here, especially locally.
Yeah.
So it kind of touches closer to home for some of the new anglers and just anglers in general. So it's definitely pretty
Yeah.
cool for sure.
So I guess this is kind of putting you on the spot, but did you pull anything from those 10 episodes that came into play with the multi-species madness?
Well, I pulled the trip to BC there from Eves as soon as I
Oh,
listened.
that works.
Yeah, I booked with him and a lot of the stuff just in general, John and Gord and actually every single pod that's been out, there's always information to take in no matter who it's from, right? There's always like we've been talking for an hour, right? There's always little snippets of information to use whether it's on your next trip or future trips, there's always something to be learned, which is really cool.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you're really gonna enjoy that trip with Eve there. That's you're doing 2 days, right?
Yeah, the 29th and
Yeah.
30th of July. I leave on Saturday here and gonna stop in Banff for a little guided trip there too. So maybe catch
Okay.
a cool lake trout out of some turquoise water or something cool just to
Oh,
knock.
that'd be sweet.
Yeah,
Well, I guess you'll be able to listen to yourself. This will come out the Friday before you leave, so you'll get to
Perfect.
listen to yourself if you want to hear yourself there. Yeah.
For sure. No,
No, sweet. So I guess I should let you go, but I guess where can the people find you online?
you can go to my Facebook. It's just my name, Rylan Parrot, and then my Instagram is Rylan with two underscores and then Parrot. So I
Okay.
post pretty actively on both, and I've got some pretty cool ideas coming up soon. So hopefully, can see some cool stuff on there for sure.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
also,
Well, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, you can always message me if you're if you need. By no means am I claiming to be pro or anything, but just
Yeah.
for any basic information, for sure, you can always send me a message or we can get out fishing or whatever for sure.
Yeah. No, we need a disclaimer before the pod, a little voiceover saying we're not professionals. We just like to fish and talk about fishing. Because
Yeah,
by no means are we professionals, but
yeah,
yeah. No, we really appreciate you coming on. No, Brandon wasn't here, so some of the Brandon fans, sorry he wasn't here for this one. He's got some stuff that he's getting ready for. So, but yeah, thank you for joining us, and thanks for kind of diving into some of that shore fishing knowledge that you've gotten. Even like you said, only at 18, you're really grinding out there and putting out some good fish. So it's a lot of fun to watch.
yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
No problem.